About time. So, namaste everyone, and we are now on the last chapter of the book, and this is the 46th session, and mm, this is the chapter 18 called Happiness, Peace, Contentment, and Bliss, Sukh Shanti Santosh Anand. So, finally, that is what we want, right? And that is the accomplishment of the study, right? This is what the realization is about. So, so I think we get a lot of logic, a lot of reasoning, a lot of understanding of in the book. We look at the things from many perspectives, but finally, it has to there has to be a transformation in the self, right? And the transformation in the self would mean that we should be able to see the reality as it is, right? Not just at the level of logic or at the level of perception, but also at the level of um, seeing the reality as it is, which we call sakshatkar or direct perception or bodh, which is the enlightenment and the realization. The realization is the point of actually the most highest stability, point of stability, right? In which you are one with the reality, right? And there is no gap between uh, you and the reality. So that is what is called the tadrupta or the consonance with the reality. So this is what this chapter is about. Today, Spencer is going to lead us in the reading. So welcome, Spencer. You want to say something before you start?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for the introduction. Um, yeah, I can just get started. Um, and I will share before reading, I will share about my experience uh, preparing for this and what I thought. So let's just get into it. So thank you everyone for joining and just some general disclaimer is that it should be obvious and go without saying, but whatever I have got here is just little bits and pieces that I'm putting together, just a glimpse maybe at best. So um, I there's it is not complete. It is can be wrong and there's much more that I need to get to grasp it. So, but that being said, I'm still going to speak it with confidence, just because that makes it easier for presenting. Um, and then afterwards, then at least you know what I've thought, where I am with it, and then afterwards it can be picked apart and reflected and improved and refined. But at least I just want to share that I'm just in a progress, which is obvious. And
Spencer, we can't hear you somehow. Uh,
you can see the issue is the microphone is a little bit damaged, the wire. The the signal is not getting through, just like the signal from Atma is not getting through to us. So there's a kink in the wire. That's the right there. That's the just like the delusion inside of us. It's blocking everything. So, anyways, so when Rakeshji asked me to do it, I accepted right away because I knew that it's a good opportunity for me. But it was amazing, like just upon accepting it right away, I just had a sense of responsibility and inspiration and I took it on as like a challenge, and I knew it will be good for me because the first time I did the reading, I think we've all experienced now, whoever has read that it demands you to like focus and read more precisely and really try and understand it as opposed to just glossing over it. And so, but it was just amazing to me how the moment I accepted, from that moment, which was maybe a week ago, until now, like I've been filled with some enthusiasm and some inspiration. And it's simply just from accepting the responsibility to understand and to present this, you know. And in retrospect, and I knew this, but I can see I was in a bit of like a bit of a rut, a bit stuck, you know. Just normal unhappiness, nothing nothing too extreme, but normal unhappiness of just like, you know, trying to a lot very effortful, you know, trying to find satisfaction in just the things that I'm doing and the content that I'm consuming and the, you know, whether that's intellectual content, podcasts or, you know, or food or snacks or activities or work, just always trying to satisfy the happiness in those things. And deep down, obviously, I know that the real satisfaction, or I had the idea that satisfaction will come through this philosophy, through this worldview, but in practicality, you know, just living, I keep seeking hope in all the worldly things. And and it's very effortful, it's very tiring. Um, and it's a downward spiral, you know, it's a cycle because once you look for happiness in the material things and the activities and the work, you know, and it you get a little bit, so it keeps you going. It keeps you going. You get a little bit, but then you feel the energy goes, you know, the effort, it doesn't last. And then to try and get back again, you need to do more, you know? So it's like this constantly push and pull, push and pull. And so I see what Babaji says when he says that materialism just leads to struggle, you know, it leads to internal struggle because you're always trying to get the happiness and then it goes and then you get it and it's very tiring chasing this temporary thing. And then especially if every single individual is chasing this temporary happiness, you know, then and chasing it in the outside world, then of course there's going to be struggle amongst people as well, you know, as we struggle for the resources, for the things. So it just became clear, yeah, this effortfulness, or restlessness is very much alive and well within me, and due to materialism, basically, just trying to seek happiness there. But as soon as I accepted responsibility for reading this, it gave some direction. You know, I was being inspired more for knowledge, you could say, more to understand. You know, which is, as we will read, a continuous source of happiness. So it was just really good. Just before I even read anything, basically, this chapter already helped me. So, so that being said, I would like to just start reading, and I'll just express my gratitude. One for Rakeshji, as I said, for asking me to do this, and two for hosting this, to giving the opportunity for everyone to participate, whether reading or listening. I think it's a really great experience for all of us. So thank you for that. Thank you to everyone else who's been participating, because despite being in a rut or despite being down, this class was one solid and consistent point, you know, throughout the week, something I could join to keep reading and stay engaged. So thank you for everyone else who's participated. And and then, of course, thank you to Babaji for providing us this content, for everything, all his effort for to satisfy his own curiosity, and then for sharing it with everyone. And so here we are today, being able to read it. So I just want to say those things, and we'll get into the reading now. So I will be, I am aware of the time. I have thought about how many pages, so some parts are a little more dense and I will need to go a little more slow. And there's some pages which are not as dense, and, you know, we'll catch up on time in those areas. And I have 3 days to do all of this. Um, so I have thought about it accordingly. So chapter 18. This is the final chapter. Happiness, peace, contentment, and bliss. So what I found reading this chapter, if I am giving a little overview, is that being the last chapter, um, it feels like everything at some point has been mentioned somewhere in the book, a little bit. Of course, everything comes together in the end, but what I mean to say is that it's nothing very novel or new. If you read chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, you're being introduced to the concepts for the very first time with the definition. Now, it might just be one definition, and then later on, somewhere else in the book, it gets explored. But I will say that by the time you've reached chapter 18, many things have been at least defined once or explained a little bit, or at least stated somewhere else in the book. So that's helpful, and I found I got to read a lot of the other chapters in preparation for this one. So happiness, peace, contentment, and bliss. The first realization. Humans have endeavored to attain a state of continuous happiness, peace, contentment, and bliss in realization. So on this point, I'll just talk already. So one word that I use a little bit in exchange with realization, and I'll explain why, has been experience. And whether it's a good word or not, maybe it's to be up for debate, but for me, it makes sense. Ultimately, we want the experience of happiness. It just sounds very close and personal. Realization is also good, and I will use them a little bit interchangeably, but just for your reference. So, in the end, human beings have been wanting the experience or wanting the realization of happiness. And this is nothing new. This is embedded in us. We can't escape it, actually. That's why it's our dharma, the dharma of happiness. Every single activity we do is driven for attaining happiness. And what is it exactly has been a question of debate for a long time. And but it's definitely something we all want, that mental well-being. And so in the past, in religious traditions, life was really tough. There was not, before materialism and so much consumption, and still for many people around the world, life is very uncomfortable, very unpleasant. And it's impossible to see how you can get happiness here when there's violence and not so much amenities, and things are just not looking very good. And so this is where religion has and idealism has really helped so many people by giving the hope for happiness. The problem is the happiness will not be achieved in this life. You have to wait until next life, basically, or until heaven. Um, so so you do all the good deeds, all the best things that you can while you're here, according to the religious ideals, according to the laws. And if you keep doing good things, you keep getting good. Just like in kindergarten, you get like a good sticker next to your name, you get a star next to your name, and you keep accumulating these good deeds. And then once you're in heaven after this life, not on this earth, then you will be happy. You'll be content. You'll be bliss. And heaven is that. That's what heaven is full of. It's just you finally get to be happy continuously, right? So that was good, and that inspired a lot of people for a long time to pursue these ideals, to pursue heaven. The problem is, and Babaji gives this critique, I think, in the introduction, is that, okay, let's say you get heaven, but at that point, it's no longer human being. What about human being right now on this earth? How is human being on this earth supposed to get happiness? By that time, once you've united with the Heavenly Father, with God, you're no longer a human being anymore, you know? It's just the soul has accomplished that. So how can a human being on this earth accomplish happiness? So that was the promise of idealism. And another interesting thing I should note is that Babaji, in the introduction, in Ek Pariche, he begins by saying, you know, I grew up in a very religious, hardworking, selflessly serving family of the Vedic tradition. And he says that his family was the highest order of the Vedic tradition. You know, he said you could not find anyone higher. He said if you could find, they would be equal, you know, to his family. And so his whole village was just resounding of the Vedanta. It was, you know, you cannot find a higher authority in that tradition. And still there, one of his main problems that he had was that even if he followed everything that they told him to do in the most advanced idealism, they themselves were not happy. So it shows that, you know, I'm nowhere near that level, you know, idealism. When I was, you know, going to church and things like that, it was just very super, you know, very basic level, you know. But still, when you're in that tradition, you hope that maybe I can pursue higher, I can do better, and then I will be happy. And Babaji is able gives us a glimpse into that, you know, even in the highest tradition, even in the most refined, his family was not happy, and so he had a hard time to listen to them, to listen to their dictates because of that. He felt like even if he did, he wouldn't get the results. So that's happiness in idealism. You know, it's more promised to you, but the results are not necessarily there. And it's promised to you not even here, but after this life for happiness. And then materialism is there, and materialism does, you know, does try and sell happiness. That's what all the advertisements are. You know, drink Coca-Cola, be happy. They say that the best advertising is not about the product, but you're trying to sell the emotion, you know, sell the happiness. So everything is really about trying to sell this idea of happiness through material consumption, through experiences of things, through all through experiences through the senses, whether that's food, sex, travel, excitement, anything, all these things. It's about attaining happiness through the senses. The challenge with that is that these are all temporary, as we all very well know. um you know, when you get a sensory, and it's just built into the material nature itself is incomplete. Babaji says incomplete nature cannot fulfill this complete desire. And if you look into it, it's like anything that comes through the senses, ultimately, you know, it's just stimulating the brain, you know, a little bit. You know, you get some release of dopamine, you get some serotonin, oxytocin, all these chemicals in the brain which feel good, you know. Um, but you know, the body cannot sustain a continuous release of these chemicals, and so it's very well known and very well experienced that, you know, maybe you take some drugs, maybe you have some experience, you get a very heightened experience, very happiness, but it always comes with a crash. There's no continuous state, you know, because this material nature is always changing. There's nothing continuous about the material nature. The body itself is always changing. The signals, the chemicals in the brain are always changing. There's no way to have a sustained happiness. It's just not there, you know. There's just no possibility for it. And I don't think that materialism claims continuous happiness either. That's been more a pursuit for idealism. So it doesn't necessarily claim, but we still want it. So we still try to achieve it. And so we do that by just, as I was describing, very effortfully, very restlessly, just trying to get more and the next and more and the next and more and the next experience. And we really, really hope that this time will be happiness, this time will be happiness, but it just cannot last. There's no mechanism for it to last. So So finally here we have a proposal for how human being on this earth can achieve happiness, peace, contentment, and bliss continuously, because that's what we want. And you can wrap up all these words, happiness, peace, contentment, into the word of just happiness. They are all sort of just a different expression, a different form, a different level of happiness. But ultimately, we want this happiness. We want resolution. We want a state of no inner conflict. Technically, where Jivan, where the self is completely in harmony. So this is what we're looking for. So let's continue reading. So the first point, humans have endeavored to attain a state of continuous happiness, peace, contentment, and bliss in realization. Yog. Yog is necessary for realization. Yog has two differentiations, inherent and attainable. In attainable yog, union with one involves separation from another as well. While in inherent yog, there is neither union nor separation of anyone. The attainment is only of what was lacking. There is no entity or activity that is devoid or free from inherent yog, omnipresent omnipotence. This is why proximity or accumulation is only of attainable yog, while realization happens of inherent yog. So right away, Babaji is saying that yog is necessary for realization of happiness. Yoga is necessary for the continuous experience of happiness. And there's two distinguishing types. One is inherent, one is attainable. So the inherent yog, the inherent union, is the union of Atma, of Jivan, specifically Atma, with the omnipresence. So of soul with God, if you want to say it like that. But it's of the self with the absolute energy. This is the inherent yog, meaning it always is and always will be. There's no it exists continuously. And that's why the realization of continuous happiness is from the realization of the inherent yog. That's why continuous happiness, because this is a continuous union. Okay. When we try to find happiness through the attainable yog, this is just coming and going. Attainable will be when two units just come together, they recognize relationship, but that always involves a separation as well. Come together, separate, come together, separate. And coming together, it's not attainable yoga is extremely helpful for realizing the inherent yoga as well. But attainable yoga can also be just the pursuit of materialism, sensory pleasure. So attainable yoga has both directions. It can be, you can meet with someone who is more awakened. You can meet with a teacher, with a guru. You can meet with a friend who can help, and this can help you to attain the inherent yoga or to realize the inherent yoga, because the inherent yoga is already attained. You don't need to attain it. It is already there, but you need to realize it. You need to experience it. So that union is always there. That is the source of continuous happiness because it is continuous. The attainable is the coming together and separation of units. But both are absolutely necessary for realization of happiness, as we will read further, as we will see further. So he says, proximity or accumulation is only of attainable yoga, while realization happens. So I explained that. So the next point, the suitable potential, ability, and receptivity for realization of inherent yoga is the right of every human. the attainment of such suitable potential, ability, and receptivity is the pinnacle of their awakening. So again, here we're saying that every single human being has the potential for realizing this continuous experience of happiness, for realizing the inherent yog, for realizing the coexistence at the core of existence. This is something that we can all achieve and we are all desiring for, and it is actually destiny for us. There's actually not so much option really. One way or another, you will be led there because the entire uh, effort of existence is to attain this, right? So we are just the last chapter I read many months ago was for effortlessness and effort, and non-delusion is effortlessness. And I was saying that this effort that we have, effort to attain happiness, it's not just like human being has that effort and we're separate from the rest of existence. The entire existence is putting this effort for realization of the inherent yog. And we're the observer of that. I mean, and it's in our hands, but we're in existence. So everyone can get it. So that's encouraging, because if in idealism, happiness, I mean, in theory, yes, everyone can get it, but in practice, it's very, very difficult, to dedicate, your life for samadhi, to practice all the ideals. It's why it's called idealism. It's idealistic. It's not practicable, not practicable. And in materialism, uh, it seems like with our current definition of happiness, many people are just doomed to never attain it, because if you need this much consumption and this much travel, and the earth will be long gone, destroyed before everyone gets a taste of happiness. So it's good that with this inherent union, we can all attain happiness. And it's actually extremely close. It's the closest thing. It's the most intimate thing to us all. So uh, it's just a matter of putting the effort in the right direction, inversion of one's effort, as we will later see. So for suitable potential, ability, and receptivity, there is study in coexistence. Humans have also undertaken studies, experiments, explorations, and practices for realization, which have reflected in the form of humanness and higher humanness. So again, uh, for attaining this continuous experience of happiness or the realization of happiness, there is study, which we need to do. Study, experiment, exploration, practices. And with this effort in that direction, in the direction of study, then we can attain humanness. I just wanted to add, like, after my experience, after reading this chapter, I don't remember the last time I had, or I certainly have never read it with this detail and this enthusiasm. Um, but I certainly became very enthusiastic for attaining realization, more than I ever have been in the past. Just seeing the possibility for it, and it's just ultimately what I want. I mean, and what everyone desires. But how can I, without an experience of happiness, life is just, it's tough. And so I just began to imagine the possibilities of, with a continuous experience of happiness, how much different life would be, how much different all the interactions and the world would be. And when I met Babaji, you know, you could get a glimpse of that in him. And he says that everything he did was effortless after realization. Effortless in the sense because he's being powered by the absolute energy, you know, and 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 So anyways, after reading this chapter, it seems like this is the very basic for human being. It's life starts after this, after realization. Upon realization, then the good stuff can really start to appear. So so let's keep reading. In this direction, the embodiment to awakening is found only in the sentient, in knowledge order, in awakened humans who are in the form of humane human, deific human, and divine human. For increasing their numbers, cohesiveness of experiment, study, behavior, and systems is essential for humankind because there is no possibility of crime or wastage by such evolved humans. So, human being is the one who will attain continuous happiness, continuous experience and realization of happiness. And upon attaining it, um, life is transformed. The jivan is completely transformed. And your entire behavior and work, you will have behavior with justice, thoughts of dharma and complementary or just harmonious work. And and doing this transforms the earth. Once you have this continuous experience of happiness and you live with that, then it's no longer possible to commit crime or wastage, because as you'll see, crime and wastage are only done um, due to unhappiness, due to ignorance. With happiness, one cannot commit a crime, right? So let's read the next line. And he says, yeah, so we need to increase the numbers of such awakened human beings. And I could not agree more that it is the need of the time, and with and so in order to increase the numbers, there's also some systems that can, and education and production and health and all the systems uh, can be complementary for human beings awakening. So next line. Humans commit crime only due to ignorance, over expectation, or poverty, and they incur wastage only due to lack of wisdom. Both crime and wastefulness are not supportive from the perspective of humanness and sociality. Crime is due to unawakening. So again, with continuous experience or realization of happiness, Madhyast, as we will further explore, is in full effect, regulating jivan, regulating life, free from excesses both ways of over and under. But as before we have this experience, we're in the state of delusion. Delusion means basically in our imagination, in chit, in our visualization, we have the flaws of over-evaluation, under-evaluation, and unevaluation. And sprinkled in between, we have some vague glimpse of the reality of what we want. We know we want happiness. We have some vague ideas about how life could be or should be, but it's not clear, and it's clouded by delusion, which is we either over-evaluate something, we think it's more, we under-evaluate, think it's less, or we unevaluate, we have not seen it clearly. So it's like, you're walking around uh, with sometimes with a magnifying glass, and you're seeing things up close, you're too focused and you're bumping into it, or walking around with a telescope and you're seeing things too far away, you're under-evaluating and you just keep running into walls and bumping into people. So it's like without a clear understanding of life, without a clear vision of life, of course you're going to make mistakes. And the reason is that we've over-evaluated the body, the senses, and we're focused on attaining and on obtaining pleasantness from the body. And with that perspective, of course, we're going to make mistakes and commit crimes. And as it's been said many times, crime is three. It's lack of character. Crime will be other wealth, other husband, wife, and unkind work and behavior. So crime and wastefulness are not possible with realization of happiness. Wastefulness I found interesting. I just looked the definition. I was trying to figure it out a little bit more. What is wastefulness exactly? And one place Babaji describes wastefulness as basically desire is overinvested in the body, in the senses. So desire has a much greater potential. Desire has the ability to, or imaging has the ability to desire for undivided society, universal orderliness, 10-tier system, imagining family and all these things. But instead it's too much focused on the body. So it's a waste of resources. It's like if I want to go down the street and I take a helicopter, I do not need a helicopter for that. The helicopter can maybe take me much further. It has much greater potential. So it's a waste of the energy there. So that's wastefulness. So next line. The study and practice of mediative activity, Atma, based on Madhyas Darshan, which has been presented after exploration itself, leads to cohesiveness. Cohesiveness is justice, dharma, and truth-based behavior, thought, and realization. So again, with the experience, with the realization of happiness, from there, justice, dharma, and truth in the self and in the world become coherent. It's like with realization, then you have thoughts of dharma, you have behavior of justice, and in the world, you will manifest coexistence, the truth. So this coherence happens only after tapping into the source of happiness. It's another sort of metaphor which I came up with. I don't know how accurate it is. And I know Babaji is not always a fan of similes and metaphors because they don't identify the reality. But I felt it's like, we're dying of thirst and we're walking all around looking for water, here and there, looking somewhere that can quench our thirst for that happiness, not realizing that actually there's a continuous source inside. There's a well that's just bursting at the seams, So, and that source is Atma, is coexistence. And from that source, once we recognize that source, then it just flows like crazy, And then Babaji says I think he says, I remember we were talking, then you can bring it to every household. You can pipe the water to every home. But we need to identify that source within of happiness. And then it leads to cohesiveness. Next line. Humans have no possibility of any generative or degenerative activity in the absence of thought. And honestly, I could not figure this line out. It seems like it's just standing out a little bit for me. Yeah, it was not making sense.
Yeah, so basically there are three kinds of gunas or the properties that any human being can express or any entity can express, which are called sam, visham, or madhyas. That is, we are calling generative, degenerative, or mediative. So in the case of, so what this line actually is saying is that in the absence of thought, there is no possibility of humans to generate any, uh, have any generative or degenerative activity. So thought is the way humans express themselves. That's all this line is saying, that human, the center of human is the thought, not the body, but the thought. Thought essentially is the jivan that it is, that he is talking about.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying. Yeah, it didn't make sense because there's it to me, I was reading it like there is no time when human being has no thought, only in the state of samadhi. So I wasn't sure, but the way you've described it makes sense.
Yeah, it does stand out a little. Yeah. So basically, you're right in saying that in basically apart from samadhi, all other states humans have thought, and that is the normal human being, right? Samadhi is not the normal human being. Samadhi is not the state of normal human being. So when a human is actually expressing a normal human being, a natural human being is with the thought. So essentially, if any happiness or manifestation of happiness has to happen, it has to happen with thought. So clearly, that is the area to work on. That is to work on, focus on, that what actually is at the root of thought. If that
Hmm.
actually works out, then uh, Dishta, you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just wondering if this Anubhuti was in comparison to the previous one, which is talking about the mediative activity of the Jivan. So, because that is mentioning how the mediative activity is arising from the Atma, and then of course, the realization dimension of the Jivan, the human being. And then that all generative and degenerative activities are only arising from the thought dimension, out of the four dimensions of the human being: the work, behavior, thought, and realization. So maybe
Hmm.
giving the source of each of the three.
Yeah.
I also see what you're saying, and and it also makes sense because, but like Atma, as I understand it, is only Madhyast. He
Hmm.
mentions a few times. There's no possibility for any generative, degenerative, right?
Hmm.
So that only belongs to the lower faculties, I suppose.
Hmm. Hmm.
But anyways, I think thank you for the input, everyone. There's time, Rakesh. We can that's great. It clarifies it. So we can move on. Truth is the eternally inherent omnipotence that exists even prior to awakening, and the ultimate decline is also encompassed in it. Realization according to this truth is referred to as higher conformance. Humans have experienced a continuity of resolution and bliss only in this realization. So again, he's just highlighting how omnipotence is there prior to awakening, and it's there at the ultimate decline. Ultimate decline, I suppose, would be just at the most basic unit, at just the hydrogen, or even if you go smaller, just at the any subatomic particle or atom, it's also there. So it's there in the ultimate decline, and it's also there in the ultimate awakening, and it's there um, in both situations all the time, always. And realizing this omnipotence is referred to as higher conformance. And the opposite of that would be lower conformance. So Jivan has the possibility for conforming, for realizing omnipotence, for conforming to the absolute energy, or has the possibility for trying lower conformance, trying to seek refuge and seek happiness in the body. But here, the continuous source of happiness will be the higher conformance, because it is a continuous state. Next line. The humane human has all three righteous desires apparent in the form of humane propensity or tendencies, and their perspective is aligned with justice along with dharma and truth. Their intrinsic nature has been recognized in the form of fortitude, courage, and generosity. Humans with such propensity, tendencies, intrinsic nature, and perspective are recognized as awakened humans. They possess knowledge of comprehensive resolution, and in order to implement it, they remain engaged in manifesting righteous desires, especially progeny desire and wealth desire, in limited areas. In this way, they manifest the use and right use, and manifesting purposeful use remains as an expectation. Thus, expressing and evidencing deific human and divine human is a need in them. So here Babaji is saying that upon realization, upon attainment of happiness, peace, contentment, bliss, upon this experience, one naturally lives with humanness. And he has described humanness in the previous chapters. In chapters, I think 3, it comes to the first time, or 4, but he's described it many times. There's a certain perspective that one has living with humanness, where now you're perceiving the world based on justice, orderliness, and truth. There's a tendencies, which one has, which here he's called as, the tendencies would be desire, wealth desire, progeny desire, fame desire. And then there is the innate nature, kindness, and in inhuman kindness, grace, compassion, peace. And in inhumanness also has its own set of those. But here with humanness, what I found interesting about this line is that humanness is primarily engaged in progeny desire, wealth desire. So meaning the want for material prosperity, for production in line with natural cyclicality, and progeny desire will be the desire for family, for participating in orderliness, continuity of human being. So these remain the primary desire for humanness. And then there's deific and divine human, which will be in the category of higher humanness, which after my reading of this chapter and trying to figure it out, it appears like the higher humanness, it is the same humanness, but it gets expressed on a higher level, so to speak. So rather than being engaged just within the family and maybe the community and the village, the hallmark or the defining factor of deific human and divine will be the ability to take this and influence the society, and to spread awakening to a larger scale. And that's where the fame desire comes in. And we'll describe that a little bit later. But the idea is that with continuous experience of happiness, humanness comes and all this good stuff comes with it. All the nature and desires and all the good things naturally come with it, and the world will also become good that way. So next line. Realization in higher conformance is inherently the activity of reception of signals from the developed, for which it is absolutely necessary to have a tendency, endeavor, and objective towards awakening. So if we want to realize this inherent yog, inherent union, then we need to be receptive to the signals of the activities of vritti, chit, buddhi, and atma. We need to be receptive to these signals. And for that, we obviously need to make it an endeavor. We need to make it an objective. And otherwise, our focus will remain elsewhere. So it really is amazing. And elsewhere, Babaji does describe that, we all have the same means for this. I believe maybe it was in the previous chapter that we all have the same means for this awakening. We all have the body, we all have the mind, we all have thoughts, desire. These are the same in all of us. And the difference between advancement and deterioration, it looks like a mystery, Babaji says, from the outside, it looks like, how are some people progressing and some people declining? It looks like a mystery, but we all have the same means for it. It just depends on which way we focus them, and it's really two directions. There's higher conformance, inner reflection, and outer. And so it's quite inspiring in the sense that we already have the means for awakening. It's just a matter of focusing them, just like you get your magnifying glass and you put it right at the right focus to start the fire. So every human is awakening, every human is awakening oriented, i.e., they desire to be awakened. This awakening is achieved through yoga only. Humans are impatient, impetuous, distressed, anxious, agitated, and restless only in their quest for awakening. So, as I mentioned earlier, until the time we have awakening, realization of happiness, then Jivan is not in a good shape. It's distressed. There's a lot of inner contradiction. There's nothing guiding it because ultimately the realization provides madhyast, it provides a mediating force to regulate all these activities. And prior to that mediating force, it's just overvaluation, undervaluation, push and pull. It's a struggle in there. There's no referee. The referee is the one who mediates, makes sure everything runs smoothly. So it's just a total free for all. And in that state, which we're all experiencing, there's just some different ways of describing that pain. So just different ways of describing the different conflicts that exist in Jivan prior to this union. So we'll read the definitions and I can try and explain. They're not completely clear for me in definition, but certainly I know I must be experiencing them. So impatient, trying to express more desire than one's receptivity. So for me, I'm not, these are not very clear for me, but it seems like it might be, I have this vision of, I can have a happy family, I can have a happy relationships and my work can be fulfilling, and my community engagement can be very fulfilling and rewarding. But if I don't have the receptivity from Atma, if I don't have the receptivity, the understanding of coexistence, then I'm just desiring more than what I have potential capability of, and this is, impatience. We all have maybe some grand desires, but don't have the right ability to fulfill them. Impetuous, quickly taking action to satisfy the desired awakening, despite lacking the necessary skill, proficiency, and mastery. So again, while being impatient, then we might try to implement something. But if we don't have the skills and proficiency and mastery, again, it will just lead to maybe distress, which is the next one, distressed. Feeling the pain from lack of desired awakening. So this is the human state right now. Unawakened human beings are in pain. We want awakening somewhere, we want it, and we're all pursuing for it. I mean, you could flip this positive. You could say that it is this pain which I don't know if it inspires, but at least it enforces us to look for some other solutions, to continue seeking the solution of happiness. And somewhere I've heard Babaji has said, the more pain, the quicker relief as well. So definitely we don't want pain, and to avoid pain, we can put effort to move beyond that. Anxious, becoming full of pain from lack of desired awakening. So just having pain is not enough. Now you'll become totally filled to the brim, just overwhelming, too much pain. Anxious. Restless, unexpected movement towards desired awakening. This one did not make so much sense to me, because that seems like almost a positive thing. If one day I wake up and I'm moved closer to awakening, I'll be very happy. Maybe that's restlessness, but I'm not sure about this one. When I looked at the Hindi, I don't believe that awakening was in there, but look, I'm not sure. So restlessness is somehow like a unexpected speed or momentum in a certain direction. Then there's agitation. The pressure from encroachment or attack itself is agitation. This one I experience quite well, quite vividly. The smallest things can bother me, and the smallest thing, outside things, someone just crunching their food very loud can cause agitation for me, or just something didn't quite go the way I wanted it to, causes agitation. So it's the pressure from the outside world, which should not be the way that our life, that Jivan experiences things. This just highlights the importance for tapping into that awakening or that realization of happiness, because from that everything gets regulated. Entire Jivan gets regulated in Madhyast, from Atma all the way out. Prior to that, Man is here looking at the outside world, and things keep bombarding it, keep attacking it, and it creates a ripple effect in Jivan. So agitation is just being attacked from these pressures of sam and visham, from fear and greed. Fear and greed. We want something, we avoid something, and this creates some unintended or undesirable effect in jivan. So, and then there's lawful conduct. Behavior that is according to moral policy and governance policy. So this one stands out a little bit in that all the others seem to be more negative. This is just defining lawful conduct. So next line. Humans have engaged in exploration, discovery, experimentation, occupation, practice, and invention in various dimensions for taste and realization only. Taste. That which is lacking or insufficient in one, and one has the desire to attain it, the effectful activity resulting from its attainment, wherein there is satisfaction, or at least its anticipation, is referred to as taste. So this is, so Babaji is saying that we've engaged in all sorts of things for taste and realization. So taste, the way that I really like this definition, by the way. It took, at the first read, it was like a little bit confusing, but after, digging through it a little bit more, it seems to make more sense. So currently we have an expectation, a hope of happiness from the senses, from something in the outside world. And by the way, senses, I feel like it's often, we give the examples of like just very gross sensory experiences, like I literally eat something, or I listen to music, or I feel something, on my skin, which are all sensory experiences. But I feel like I can, just by scrolling through Twitter, just by scrolling through Instagram or scrolling through Facebook, you're also tasting all these different things, either you like it or you don't like it, So the taste is a very subtle, it's like our acceptance towards the things in the outside world, what is pleasant for us, and so when we're anticipating something pleasant, when we do that activity, we have a desire to attain it, so we attain it, we get some experience on ourselves, and it either is satisfying or unsatisfying. It's either like a complete taste or incomplete taste, or complete experience or incomplete, and that activity, that effect, is referred to as taste. So I think I think we can all observe this in ourselves, that we want something, we go for it, it has an effect on us, and that's the taste that we have. And it's either satisfying or not satisfying. And as long as it's the pursuit in the material things, it's not going to be satisfying. I feel restless. I grab my phone, I scroll. It provides a little bit relief, a little bit of pleasant things I get to view and hear, things which feed my conditioning. But it's obviously not enough. I keep scrolling, and then what am I doing? Wasting time. So taste is a very interesting definition. And I understand the challenge of using the word experience for realization, because right now, the way we use experience is just sensory experience, so I think that's important to make the distinction that there's these two directions of happiness, So anyways, taste here for the senses, but upon realization, taste is of the values, and values are experienced in relationship. So So there's taste of senses or taste of values, but are both are that fulfillment there. So anyways, we're pursuing for those things. Next line. Hunger and thirst generated from desire, lust and anger generated from affinitive or malicious agitation, the four instincts and greed from hope of mun. These are compulsions of deluded humans. Behavior and three righteous desires nurtured by awakening through art and literature, presented with contemplation, existentiality, and resolution presented with enlightenment. These have been revealed by awakened humans. So again, here Babaji is just describing the two, when Jivan is filled with these agitations, it leads to one result. When Jivan is deluded, it leads to one result: fear, greed, lust, anger. And these have been described in the previous chapter quite nicely. You can go back and look at the definitions of all these different types of agitation within the jivan, and it's easy to identify within ourselves, and there's strong feelings within the self, but they unfortunately do not have the good results. And on the other hand, with awakening, with experience, with realization of happiness, then human behavior is very different. It's filled with the desires, progeny, wealth, fame, and this gets expressed through art and literature. And in fact, right now we are experiencing the artwork of Babaji. This literature, the art and literature which he's presented, is the natural outcome of his awakening. Upon awakening, he effortlessly wants to share, create literature, publish book, he has some beautiful artwork as well. In some of the books, he's got very beautiful diagrams showing the jivan and the systems and all these things. So that becomes a natural outcome of awakening, is you present the reality in your behavior, and the reality gets presented in your work, and it's all for allowing others to also be inspired to realize that inherent yog, that union with God and coexistence within them. So next line. All activities in the world are for realization of the omnipresent omnipotence, proximity of the developed, awakened, and taste of the undeveloped material nature. So this is where Babaji says yoga is very important for realization, for attaining the continuous happiness. Yoga is very important. The continuous happiness itself is realization of the inherent yoga, but everything else is attainable yoga. Just becoming in proximity with other humans, with material nature, this is all the attainable yoga. And the purpose of the attainable yoga is for realization of the inherent yoga. So we interact with the world, we interact with more awakened human beings, with less awakened, with material nature. We interact with these people and things, and the objective or the usefulness of all these unions is to help to invert and to realize the inherent union. So when he says yoga is important, yoga is all that there is, really. It's just the relationships between other humans and with the rest of nature. And relationships are very important for very important, mean it's the way to do it. That's what it's the way to attain the inherent yoga is through these relationships. Okay, next line. Now this next little section here is was a little bit dense the first time I read it, and still after the 10th time reading, it is a little bit dense. But we'll try and understand it. And the first 2 points are the realization, and then there is a little explanation to help to detail what is meant here. So, and it's not fully clear for me, really, but we'll try and understand it. The ideal for all humans is the realization in coexistence, which naturally leads to absolute accordance and absolute oneness in coexistence. Humans who embody this absolute oneness as humanness attain the category of deific human and divine human. Absolute connectedness and absolute observance with such individuals occur naturally in the awakened human tradition. Thus, the permanent presence of the evidence of the highest development and awakening in human tradition itself is universal well-being. Next line, when a deluded human progresses towards awakening, then on the basis of their ideal being awakened, their delusive properties and nature gradually disappears. As a result, Jivan evidences the absolute accordance with awakening, which manifests in human tradition. In the deluded state, one considers overvaluation, underevaluation, and misevaluation to be values. However, after awakening, one recognizes Jivan values, human values, established values, civic values, and the usefulness and aesthetic values. This itself is the evidence of absolute oneness and absolute connectedness. Coexistence is eternally proximate. The continuity of awakening itself is the absolute observance. Absolute oneness in awakening marks the end of delusion, meaning the effect of delusion becomes nil on its own after awakening. And we'll just read the next point as well before going back. Absolute accordance is nothing but becoming completely affected by the properties, intrinsic nature, and dharma of the ideal. Absolute oneness is the merging of one's own value into the ideal's value. Being in the refuge of ideal is absolute connectedness, while continuously perceiving the ideal is absolute observance. Awakening itself is the ideal of humans. The final goal and accomplishment of realization is the ideal of absolute accordance, absolute oneness, absolute connectedness, and absolute observance. Okay, so we have a few new words here. And so the first is ideal. So what is the ideal? What is the ultimate ideal, the thing that we are striving for? You know, in ideal, I mean, even in day-to-day language, it's like, what would you ideally want? You know, sometimes, you know, we run like a Airbnb sort of thing here where some people come and stay and they say, can I have a late checkout? Can I check out later? I say, okay, what time would you ideally like to leave? I give them the option. What is the best scenario? So ideal is the best scenario. And what is the best scenario? Well, the best scenario is realization. It's experience of continuous happiness. And this experience of continuous happiness is not only within oneself, but this experience of continuous happiness ultimately leads to heaven on earth, really. Oh, naturally leads to those things. Yeah. Thank you. But it leads to a heaven on earth situation, absolute accordance, absolute oneness. So the ideal, I know Babaji has not said it this way, so maybe I'm stretching, but to me, what comes to mind is the wish that he has, which is usually at the bottom of the chapter. May earth be heaven, may humans be divine, may goodness prevail. I can't remember exactly, but it's the bringing heaven on earth, bringing that here is the ideal for all humans. And with awakening, that naturally happens as he mentions. Okay, let's do it a little bit more line by line here. So humans who embody yeah, it's a little bit tricky for me, I will not lie, but that's why I sort of refer to the last paragraph, the explanation, and I can try and explain that. So absolute accordance, the third paragraph, which I read, absolute accordance is nothing but becoming completely affected by the properties, intrinsic nature, and dharma of the ideal. So if the ideal is awakening, is realization of happiness, upon realization of happiness, becoming completely affected by that. In the idealistic tradition, the thing that resembles is like completely surrendering to God. Instead here of surrendering to God, you're completely becoming completely surrendering, completely affected by coexistence. Okay, you've completely become in accord, in one with it. And this actually reminds me, I'll just take one side tangent and then we'll wrap it up. We have 10 minutes left. But when I was in India for the very first time and I met Babaji, I met him and first time at the Sammelan. I traveled around a little bit, went to a few different sanstans, met many people, had amazing experience, and at the same time I kept reading Manav Vyavhar Darshan, the yellow book, and kept reading that, carrying it around, talking, thinking this and that. And one day I remember on the train, on the Indian train, which I love, by the way, I miss that experience. I was sitting, I remember at the train station, I thought, you know what, I've always wanted to, prior to understanding Madhyas Darshan, I was inclined and I was always wanted to talk to God, and through my prayers, maybe I can talk to God, I can get some answers. And suddenly one day it clicked for me that Babaji himself is a representation of the entire existence. It's like if I want to talk to the whole existence, if I can actually get advice from the existence, which I found quite remarkable and amazing. That here is one human which is in complete accordance. This is why it's reminding me. He's in completely accordance with coexistence. He has complete oneness with coexistence. He's a complete reflection of coexistence. And so I felt like that's amazing. We always wish for the universe to reveal itself to us, to speak something to us, and maybe in the form of a dream, in the form of a whisper, maybe in the form of an animal or a breeze. We're waiting for these signs. And here, existence, you can just talk to someone. It can come into language. You can hear it. It's much easier that way to get to talk to the to get advice of universal advice, and that's the result of any awakened human. They become absolute accordance and absolute one with existence. So absolute accordance is becoming influenced. Next line here. Absolute oneness is the merging of one's own value into the ideal's value. So your value is becoming your usefulness, your worthiness is becoming aligned with coexistence. Your experience of happiness, realization is aligned with existence. Next will be being in refuge of the ideal is absolute connectedness. So again, what is refuge? Refuge is we have this hope for happiness, and we seek refuge. You seek shelter. If it's raining outside, if there's thunder and lightning, you want to seek refuge inside some shelter. You're looking, where can I go to be dry and safe, right? And currently, you can look for refuge in the senses. You can look for refuge there, that maybe if I go to the senses and enjoyment, then I will feel good. I will be safe there. But ultimately, we need to seek refuge in the ideal. So refuge in coexistence, in realization of coexistence is where we will seek refuge. And once we've seeked our refuge there, then there's nothing, no more fear, no more fear, none of those, everything, all those things disappear right away. And that will be absolute connectedness. We're fully connected with the universe. And continuously perceiving the ideal is absolute observance. So we are completely aligned, connected, one with the universe, with coexistence. And by continuously perceiving this connectedness, that is absolute observance. So if I just, again, draw some comparison here, like in the spiritual tradition, this absolute connectedness was once you dissolve yourself with God, you become united with God. But here it's very different, because that unification with God, human being is no longer there. It's just the soul completely even forgets itself, and just unifies with God. This is how human becomes unified with existence. So this is for human being. And with this unification with existence, then we will live in this world, and we will create heaven in this world. I'll read one more line and we'll call it there. So, it is upon awakening that the expression, communication, and exposition of values with evidence occur within humans, and its continuity is maintained within human tradition. This is love and devotion. Actually, rather than explaining, I think we should just end there. We've got 6 minutes, and thank you so much. I really enjoyed this. Thank you for listening. And if anyone has any comments or questions, the floor is yours.
Yeah, Spencer, this was another level. What you have done is truly remarkable. Totally enjoyed it. I think the way that you have summarized this thing, and you have actually read and with the feeling all the things. Of course, there are limitations in my my translation of this and conveying what Babaji has been saying. But the way that you have actually carried it through, it is simply amazing. I'm totally impressed, right? So, uh, really liked it. I have no words to say. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
Supriya, Kevin, you want to say something?
Yes, Spencer, thank you for a wonderful, wonderful session for this wonderful 1.5 hours. So, just like you said in the beginning, that the moment you took up this responsibility to read this chapter, you were injected, just by means of taking up this responsibility, you were injected with a sense of enthusiasm and inspiration. And that enthusiasm and that inspiration actually got transferred to us, to me, to Kevin, definitely, uh, in the way you clarified, you expressed, you explained. It was so calming and so warm to listen to you. It was so, so, so heartfelt. And one particular thing I definitely want to mention, and I'm sure that all the people who've been listening have a similar feeling to that. When you spoke about, how Babaji is actually a representation of the entire existence, and through him or with him one could come into language with the existence, with wholeness, with completeness. We definitely had goosebumps, because it's a very symbolical, exaggerated way of putting things, but it still somehow resonated so beautifully. And it was really a goosebump moment for us. And also the metaphors that you used about wastefulness, how we're wasting the body, with that example of that. So that also touched me a lot. It was so descriptive and so visual, no? When you said that you want to go to the street and you use a helicopter, that's such a wastage of the resource. So it's a direct connection of how we can reflect on an everyday basis, how when we are we how when we are wasting our most important resource, body and mind and imagination. So yes, thank you, thank you, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the feedback.
Shilpa Didi, would you like to say something?
Yeah, I think actually Rakesh Bhaiya and Supriya said it so well. So absolutely agree. Like your enthusiasm was so palpable. And yes, that example of Babaji, like, quoting him as a voice of the universe was so true, because we can really feel it in all his, whatever we read, it always comes through. So really amazing job. And I think you're the really very apt torchbearer for this, because, you're reading it only in English, like while I think the rest of us we have both Hindi and English, especially Hindi. So for you to have that just the English bit, and you're taking it so beautifully forward. So really fantastic. So yeah, many congratulations to you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
And thank you.
Sheila Didi, you want to say something?
I wasn't going to say anything, but yeah, I just Spencer, beautiful, beautiful. That's all.
Thank you, Sheilaji. So nice to hear from you. Thank you so much.
Anyone else would like to say something? I think we had a wonderful session. Looking forward to the next two. This is really blockbuster ending of this whole exercise. I'm very happy. Mhm.
Great. Well,
Uh,
oh, go ahead. Yeah.
no, you go, you go.
I was just going to sum it up, like, thank you so much, everyone, for participating. And that's what I said in the beginning. But really, this class has been like some piece of continuity, of study for me for the last, 6 months or however long it's been going. So it's been extremely helpful for me. It's just kept me engaged a little bit, and it's only possible with everyone's participation, right? So thank you.
I just wanted to add, I mean, I totally, completely agree with everyone. I think we were all feeling the same. That was so beautiful. The feeling, going into each meaning so intricately and uh, in such a heartfelt way with such clear, even I think metaphors are fine. I feel they're sprinkled throughout the darshan. Aplavit, inundated, is what is it if not a metaphor? And then your example of how, it's flowing down, like gushing down. I was reminded of the buddhi being inundated, actually. So like, exactly the same metaphor also. So yeah, all these ingredients were so nicely together. It was a very, very, very rich session. And the only thing I wanted to add was asking Rakesh Mama if like Spencer feels like 3 sessions might not be enough, would
Yeah.
we could possibly even,
Yeah,
make it.
definitely. Definitely. So you can take as many sessions as you like, Spencer, for
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
so the second part of the chapter, I didn't quite get halfway for the second part, but it does speed up. If you see the next pages, it's like very short definitions. It's just like justice, injustice, like kindness. It just like kind of goes like that. So that's fine, but it's the final section, which is just the activities of Jivan. I don't know. I have not even prepared that section that much. I have not read it that much, and I don't know to what extent I'll even be able to share on those activities. Like I can try, but it's like it looks very difficult for me, and I'm willing to take the challenge, but if that in one session, it will just be maybe just like not that
Yeah,
good.
but I was also thinking that basically the last section of this book that basically covers all the 122 acharans, that actually is at a very high level. It has been added at the end of the book. So I think that we can skip that part. And I mean, it's really up to you how much you want to do that. You can give a
Yeah, I
general.
mean, yeah, I can give it a shot. We can just read it together. We can maybe make it
Mm.
more collaborative and discussing, maybe more inputs from more people will be helpful. But it's really it's like just very point to point to point
Yeah.
and hard for me to grasp a little bit. So if I exclude that section, then I think the remaining part of the chapter I will be able to cover in the next section, and then in the next session. And then if we would like to do the third session for those 122 activities, then we can do that.
Okay. Good. So you
Yeah,
maybe you think it over, Spencer, how you would like to do this. Yeah. Somebody
Rakesh
was
ji,
saying,
yeah.
Anji.
By any chance, are you recording these sessions as well?
Yes, it is being
Okay,
recorded. Yeah,
okay,
I'll be sharing the YouTube link as well.
that's good. Yeah, while listening to you, Spencer, I was thinking you might be having your own YouTube channel. So I searched about it, but I couldn't find any such channel. So I think there is some potential to that as well.
Thank
Yes,
you. That's a great
a
compliment.
star, a star is born today.
Yeah.
Good. So we will then maybe close today's session and looking forward to the next one, Spencer. And thank you all of you for joining, and good night and have a nice day.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Thank you. Good night.